For folks who don't know me, I'm Andrea Dooley. I'm the PTSA President, and I'm pleased to host this town hall meeting that we pulled together so that we can at least share our questions with our leadership, and then to the extent that they can answer them, that'll be great. If not, hopefully they can help us figure out who will have an answer. So I sent out, when I set this, I also sent out a survey. So I wanted to kind of share the survey results with folks so they knew where everybody else was and who had participated in it. First of all, and then I'll kind of go over a few other things. I thought that we would do things in a kind of reverse order. People seem most eager to hear about next school year, and then talk about what might be available this summer, and then talk about spring. And then if anyone has, I have a couple of announcements, but if anyone else has any, please don't hesitate to either share them with me or put it in the chat so that everyone can see it. So, oops, God, it's going so fast. So who took the survey? Mostly parents. Of the 83 people who had taken it by around 1 o'clock today, the vast majority were parents, and we had a couple students, and it looks like we had one retiree and one teacher or staff member. Of the people who had taken the survey, about almost 40% are fully vaccinated, 17% are partially vaccinated, and 45% are not vaccinated at all. Hopefully those numbers will start to leap up since the governor is extending the eligibility starting next week. And then I asked whether people would be willing to participate in outdoor social events. And the reason I asked this is because the PTSA is thinking about whether we could be hosting things for either parents and families or the students. And I wanted to just get a sense of people's comfort with that. And it seems like most people are pretty comfortable with it, assuming we can do it in a safe manner. So then I went through the questions and top issues, and these are in order of interest, most and mentions. So most people had a question or concern or an opinion about the quarter systems, or preference for the block schedule, and questions about whether mini-mesters are going to continue. That is something that was announced in the district's communication last week. And I know from the presentation they did the other day that they understood there was feedback that I've asked for more information, and hopefully Mr. Fairley might have some more information. Then the second biggest thing, and mostly wrapped up with the first, was next school year, what's happening next year. Then folks wanted to know about the summer and what kind of summer events, either social events or summer school, both for credit recovery and for enrichment, academic enrichment. Then a lot of people had questions about vaccinations, both what percentage of teachers are vaccinated, and whether there are plans for students to be vaccinated at school, since eligibility at this time is 16 and older, and by the fall or even earlier, it may be younger. Question about whether we'll return to the state mandated instructional minutes, what upgrades have been made to the physical plant, and how does the school intend to use its outdoor space? What's going to happen with the rest of this year? What's happening with graduation? Will the school be providing more mental health care and kind of a way of bringing kids back to acknowledge the difficulties that the last year has presented? What sports being underway, whether other extracurricular activities could begin meeting, like performing arts and music. And then finally, these are the current some current concerns, but do we know anything about whether the ACT or SATs will be available again? whether students' pathways will be changed or changeable, and other curriculum questions that people added to the survey. So that is, that's sort of what we heard people wanted to hear about. Since this time, since I wrote this, pulled this together, I know that Berkeley Unified School District did announce that they intend to return completely in the fall full-time. So I know that that's another piece of news that might be on people's mind. And so I just want to acknowledge that and let, if Mr. Davis and Mr. Fairley can speak to it. So I'd say starting with the next topic, maybe we start kind of at the top of the funnel. And I don't know if you're comfortable with this, Sam, but maybe if you know what the parameters from the district's perspective are, and then Mr. Fairley can talk about the parameters for next year from where Oakland Tech is. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but throw it out there.
Sure, I'm happy to kick it off, and then as I think I said to you, I don't necessarily have all the answers, but I have some of the same questions that everyone else does, and I'm happy to take a list of questions and get more details from staff to respond to everybody. So I'm Sam Davis. I'm the school board representative for District 1, and I also have a son in 9th grade at Oakland Tech. So, you know, I love to start with the good news, right? So the good news is the pandemic situation has improved so rapidly in recent weeks in ways that they were unimaginable a couple months ago, right? We were in a huge spike in January, and now infection rates in Alameda County have dropped to levels not seen since last summer. Over a fourth of all county residents have gotten at least their first vaccine shot. The test positivity rate is lower than it's been since the pandemic started in Alameda County. So, you know, there's a lot of really good news, and things have shifted really rapidly. And as we've all had to do throughout the pandemic, we're all having to shift rapidly with the change in reality. And at the same time, all of us need to take responsibility, right, to keep using masks, keep practicing safety precautions over spring break and going forward, because we do not want to see things go back in a bad direction. We want to keep this good direction going. I have been saying, and I heard the superintendent say very clearly last night at the school board meeting, that the plan in Oakland Unified is to have full-time in-person instruction in the fall. At the same time, given everything that has happened, and you know, there's case rates ticking up in other parts of the country or the world, you know, it would be foolish not to make backup plans for hybrid instruction in the fall, right? We have to be prepared for both situations. And I definitely hear that there are a lot of concerns about the planning to use a quarter system next fall, in part to prepare for the possibility that we might need to have small cohorts for in-person next year for pandemic safety purposes, or just, you know, to have cohorts that are less mixing of cohorts than we do when we have, you know, the traditional schedule. So as a board director, it's not really my role to intervene in the scheduling decisions by staff, but I have definitely felt the need to raise questions because, you know, we experienced the mini-master system in our own family. And I think some of the questions that I heard were, you know, number one, understanding that the instructional minutes were significantly reduced this year because we were in distance learning. How would this be different next year under the quarter system? And what would a sample schedule look like? And then how would we address the issue of the need for sustained engagement with subject material in classes like math, world language, AP classes next year, which was a real challenge this year with mini-masters. And of course, there's the question of the tutorial that has been raised as well. So I'll just say there that, you know, these remain as questions that I've raised, and that I know the district as a whole is planning to have, to revisit, you know, some of the planning around this, and to have an engagement for middle school and high school families district-wide the week after spring break, and the date is still needs to be announced. But they are planning to do an info session for middle school and high school families around these issues. So I don't know if there's, more details that Mr. Fairley has, I'm sure he does, but that's what I have at the district level. That's
So
what I think.
Sam, at the district level, usually the school board has, putting aside what the details of any given day or week, we usually know when school is going to be back in session. The school calendar has been set or negotiated and passed by the board by March. And given all the other things that have been, under consideration, I'm just wondering whether if that's been agendized for any coming meeting or whether that's even on anyone's radar. I mean, are we going to have a regular year, or are we going to start earlier or later, or anything like that?
Yeah, there is some thought about extending the school year next year. And so that is something that we would be negotiating with OEA. And because, the very good news, right, is that for next school year, Oakland Unified is slated to get a really significant quantity of pandemic relief funding, right? So from the different relief bills, the Biden package, even the Trump package, and the Newsom extended learning dollars. So there's a lot of that money is funded based on students of highest need, and in Oakland we have a lot of students of high need. So there's a significant amount of funding. I think the total is over $200 million that's coming for next year. And we're trying to, look at a lot of different options. So in terms of the questions about mental health support, instructional intervention support for next year, there really will be some significant opportunities that we're still working on the details. But one of those is definitely an extended school year as a possibility. And so that's something that's still in negotiation. So we won't know it for sure for a little bit.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Fairley, do you want to speak any more on just looking to next year, what your understanding is? And I think the degree to which if there's any school site flexibility or how you see it playing out across two campuses, for example.
Challenging questions. Thank you. Yeah, I do appreciate participating this evening, with the understanding that the announcement did just come out last week about the final decision on the split quarters. So there's a lot of hustling going on to get a lot of things up and running. But I'll share the information that I have at this point, the thinking that I've been doing, talking it over with a few people so far, wanting to have broader conversations as we get more into what the possibilities are. So for the fall, the only decision that I've heard is that all schools in the district will be on this quarter system. The rationale that I've, as I understand it, is so that students will be able to focus on 4 classes at a time, build community within those classes, hopefully develop significant teacher-student relationships during those classes, and maintain the same number of instructional minutes. So in my mind, as I've penciled that out on paper, what it would look like, given the 7-period schedule that Oakland Tech developed a couple of years ago and is still waiting to fully implement, what we have in the 7-period modified block schedule is alternating days of 4 periods followed by a 3-period day plus a study hall, tutorial, intervention, testing period, and then 4 days and then 3 days plus the study hall, tutorial, intervention, testing period. So that is when I kind of flesh it out and see how many how long those periods would be, make sure that the instructional minutes is back up to the total. I'm certainly expecting the state requirement to go back to the regular number of instructional minutes, 64,000 or upward from there. Not split between asynchronous learning and synchronous learning, and having those parameters that were given to us in the Assembly bill that was put out earlier in the pandemic period. So in my mind, a school day would be a full 8 something to 3 something, so that it meets the constraints of the collective bargaining agreement and the instructional minutes. In order to fit it into the superintendent's model for split quarters with no more than 4 classes in a quarter, the way that I'm visualizing it is that the 4-period day would be consistently 4 period days for an entire quarter. And that would include a minimum day, because we do need to provide professional development, particularly in this particular arrangement, so that we can make sure that we have some strong teaching methods going on in the classes for the first quarter. The second quarter is where we would experience the bind, and if there are questions from the floor, I'd be happy to hear those as well. But the bind, as I see it, is 3 periods. I mean, so before I describe the bind, let me say the 7-period block schedule that we have allows us to fully meet the core course requirements, plus electives, plus the CTE course that is part of the pathway. That's why we, as a community, as teachers and administrators, move toward that, so that we could provide some credit recovery opportunities for students who may have failed a class along the way, time and schedule to actually make up that class without going to summer school, provide the career technical education course that is part of our pathway, as well as have the full complement of core courses and electives. So the course requirements are met in the 7 periods that we have. The benefit that we see of providing some time and having the agreement of the teachers to provide time for that supervised study hall period, that can also be used for intervention, that could also be used for testing, so that some of that doesn't interrupt the core classes. That covers all of the instructional minutes and instructional core course content. Now let me describe the bond. In that second quarter, as I see it, there are the 3 content area classes and then study hall. But if that occurs 5 days a week, that's more study hall than we had anticipated with the block schedule. So what I'm wondering, and I've approached the district's labor office with just an inquiry to find out if there would be possible negotiations for teachers to maybe use part of that study hall as a way of continuing through with math classes and world language classes, the other classes that were mentioned. I think science and AP were mentioned. I think that might be a possible way to address that bind. But there is a hybrid planning team at the district level that is working on planning a hybrid schedule as well, and I'm bringing that proposal to the hybrid planning team as well. the thing that we don't know, well, there are many things that we don't know, but the key thing that we don't know is what the pandemic situation will be in the fall or later as we get toward the winter. So the option that the option that comes first to mind for me is if the county health department does require that we reduce the capacity of the school so that we have fewer students in the school at the same time, then we may need to adapt that model and split the school into cohorts, similar to what other districts have been doing, of having a cohort A of students attend on one day, and cohort B would be doing their either learning with online resources or homework, other project work, and then cohort B coming in to be in person with the teacher on the following day, and cohort A would be doing the online resources, homework, project work, and other study time like that. So that's the type of schedule that that is what I'm providing to the hybrid planning team. I also am aware that the hybrid planning team is continuing to want to be as safe as possible. And at the moment, the guidance that we have from the state, the county recommendations for schools is the top two things to keep students safe are going to be wearing masks and having the students form into stable small cohorts that remain separate. Many districts are finding that very challenging to do. And I certainly understand that when I've tried to run the numbers. So that's a third alternative that's on the table, trying to work on those, keep it moving forward is a very weighty and complex process. But the only schedules that I'm considering are schedules that have the full complement of instructional minutes, and providing that opportunity to have what would be a full semester of 4 courses in the first quarter, because all 4 courses meet every day, and then a full semester of the remaining 3 courses in the second quarter, because all 3 of those classes, which are the other 3 core content plus elective plus CTE, however that comes out for the particular student, all of that is covered, but it's covered in quarter 2. So let me see, I have not been looking at the chat at all. I'm not skilled at that, but if anybody wants to bring any chat to mind, I can pause here.
I'll summarize. I think there's still a lot of confusion about what, I mean, some people are really have been very unhappy with the quarter system as it was applied this year, and feel like that the tutorial time wasn't well used, and that splitting up classes was disruptive to learning, and are worried that what is being proposed is just to take what we have now and drop it into next year, as opposed to some other model that might work and might be better for our kids. But what the problem is that the school district isn't providing any samples or any information or research about what this would look like. And for example, it's not clear whether the same number of classes would be able to be offered at the, and whether kids, would kids still have the learning loss issue where they take math one quarter, then they're off and they take it the next quarter, or would it be possible to schedule the whole year's worth of math in the first 2 quarters? So I think that the problem is really the lack of specifics as to what it might look like in practice is making it hard for people to understand how it will work, because right now it feels like just taking what we have now and plopping it into next year. And it's also frustrating because other schools are, I guess this is more of a commentary than a question, but the questions are themselves sort of geared towards not understanding and wanting to know why other school districts are not having this problem and why no one has accounted for whether the kids will be vaccinated or not. So it feels a little bit like we're being told that next year is going to be the same as this year. And I think people are upset about that. Well, that's what I'll say about it. And so I think maybe, pointing to schools or places that this has been effective. I know there's a couple proponents for this model in the chat and in this group. And so I think it would be really helpful to just understand what it would look like that's not what it's been this year. So that's what I think people's concerns are.
Thank you. I have a little bit more to offer, and it would need to be expanded upon. That I just don't have information at this time. But the difference, the thing that happened this year is we had synchronous learning. This was all distance learning. So we had synchronous learning for 2 classes in the morning, and then there was it was a different type of contact with teachers in the afternoon, the way that we had our schedule devised, so that it was asynchronous. It was office hours. It was small groups, teachers meeting with small groups. It was some time for homework and so forth. But the actual teacher content with teachers and a 2-way communication was limited to half the day. With the schedules that are being proposed for next year, it would be contact with teacher for the full like 90-minute period, 75-minute period, whatever the minutes work out to be, for 4 classes. So 2 classes before lunch, 2 classes after lunch, and with teachers and teachers directing the learning and so forth. So I think that's a significant difference from the experience that students had this year, when it was very specific instruction in the 2 synchronous classes during the day, and then more flexible contact with the material, with the teacher, with small groups that are being conducted in the afternoon time. I'm not sure I can say more about it than that, but I think there is a significant difference.
Some folks have some questions about the physical plant. What has been done so far this year to get Oakland Tech's, the windows open and the ventilation? Have there been improvements made to the school?
The latest information that I have about the ventilation in the school is that the air filtration exceeds whatever the requirements are. So I think those improvements have been completed. We have air purifiers for every classroom, so that the windows open, being able to open, plus the air purifier would keep the circulation such that we can keep the space in there healthy. For the classrooms that do not have windows, because we do have some classrooms that are interior classrooms, we have 2 air purifiers for that, and we're trying to take a strong look at what those classrooms are actually used for, so that we can make the safest use of that space.
I know some folks are interested in wondering whether outdoor spaces can be used for classroom time. And I don't know, the feedback I've heard from some teachers is that's not realistic for both teachers and students who have issues with hearing and with keeping kids' attention and so forth. So, but I'm just wondering if I know there's been moves at the elementary school to implement some outdoor learning spaces, but have you heard anything for tech?
I've had a conversation with the high school network superintendent about the possibility of bringing in tents. He was interested in it. I think I would have to say that conversation is still underway.
Principal Farley, has there been any consideration going back to full instruction like it was before? Because I personally don't think these quarter way of doing things is working. Certainly, I can tell you my son never logging in the afternoon, and he pretty much, everybody's going to school for half of a day. And stuff like language and math, it's something that needs to be refreshed every day. So I'm very, very concerned. And whereas I look at my nieces and nephews are going to Berkeley Unified, and they're going back to normal classes next year, I'm wondering why is Oakland so different? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So like I said, the afternoon will not be that flexible time. It will be a structured regular class in the afternoon. As far as the conversations leading up to the decision, I'm sure there were a lot of conversations I wasn't a part of. There were a few conversations I was a part of. So I would have to say, I'm sure there were conversations. The decision that we're working with as a district now is the decision I'm trying to be as successful with as possible.
Yeah, I was told there was some kind of student survey, but the survey sample is so small. And as parents and as educators, we don't ask the student how they want to learn. We should know, right? Because, having kids go through 90-minute blocks in a lot of these subjects, you're not going to be able to get the retention time. Retention within 90 minutes, kids are going to get lost. And then we'll try to jam as much as we can versus having, our normal schedule, how kids usually learn. I'm very concerned about these new way of reinventing the wheels. Thank you.
Sure. As far as the block schedule is concerned, with the longer periods, the benefits of the block schedule allow for, like I said, more deeper development of teacher-student relationships, as well as more time to implement project-based learning, develop a lot of agency on the part of the students for problem solving and applying skills that have been provided by the teacher and developed through the instruction provided by the teacher, and then applying those skills in authentic projects and work product that can be assessed in comprehensive ways, I guess, to check the student's understanding, not only of the particular subject matter, but of those other kind of complementary skills of project management and executive functioning and other ways that can that can help prepare the student for post-secondary work, either in a career or in college.
I just want to show, I was looking for the sample bell schedule that we had developed for this year before the pandemic, and I can't find it, but I just want to show people what the difference is. So I'm sorry this is so small, but couldn't get it to pop up bigger. Oops, go away. And in a block schedule, you have A days and B days, where you have 4 classes on A day and 4 other classes on B day. In our model, one of the B day classes would be the tutorial, which would be used for all the things that Mr. Fairley mentioned. It wouldn't be like it is in distance learning where kids don't have to show up. It would be that kids would have an assigned classroom where they would get announcements, they might get tutoring, they would have that oversight. So that's the 7-period block schedule and this would run, you get each of these days twice in a week, and then on the other day, all of your classes would meet once for a shorter period of time. I believe that the teachers at Tech had voted to have it on Monday, so they could check in with their kids. So every class would meet once on Monday. So that's the block schedule. However, my difficulty is that I haven't found a sample. I haven't found a sample quarter schedule. So I'm trying to just understand. That's what I think we're trying to understand. We never got to use the block schedule. We heard we had to do it to get Measure N funds. And now we're being told, nope, we're not doing that. And so what people just can't conceptualize it right now. So, and I think there's also frustration with the fact that it's a little bit disturbing to hear that not even you were asked, Mr. Fairley, for input. It's a problem if a small number of students were asked. The questions were very inartfully phrased, so it wasn't clear whether it was for hybrid learning, distance learning, or in-person learning. And our input from teachers and parents has also not been clear. I've heard very different things from teachers about their willingness and interest in doing this. And I have concerns about teacher retention and family retention if we aren't offering something that resembles what parents want for their kids. So it doesn't sound like you have much more information. If someone else has a sample quarter schedule that they could share in the chat, that would be awesome. I'm just going to kind of go back to our questions. Let's talk about this summer. Mr. Fairley, do you know who will be sharing resources about the summer programs?
Yes. Yeah, the Community School and Student Services Office is the office that is the one that develops summer programs and works with arranges the funding at the different high schools, and well, not only high schools, elementary school, middle school, high school. We have one of our assistant principals, Ms. Sudeth, is preparing to be a summer school principal and is working with that office in the program that Oakland Tech will be offering. There is a website on the district. There's a web page on the district website. You can either search for summer learning, or it's under the Community Schools and Student Services Office web page. The list is, it's still under development, is the notice that's on that web page, but that would be the web page where parents can go to find out what those opportunities are.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions about the summer? No. Then turning to the spring, first question about the spring is, do you anticipate that any other extracurricular or social activities will be permitted on campus besides sports?
No, that's not anything that I've heard being discussed.
Okay. And have students started returning, or will students be returning? I guess in the secondary level, they won't be returning until mid-April. Is that correct?
There are priority groups of students that are being contacted now. We had tried to do a mandatory survey through Parent Square at the secondary level that was similar to the one that K through 5 did. The responses there were not as, I don't know why people weren't responding, so we're having to make phone calls to those priority student groups and finding out how many of those will be coming, expressed a preference for in-person learning. So those are students that will be getting started March 30th up until spring break, and then continuing on.
If students who participate in the spring sports, will they be eligible for PE credit as they would in a usual semester?
Yeah, I'm still working with OAL about that, just to be clear about what the I guess I could say accountability, what the requirements will be. I'm certainly open to that, and we'll work with the counseling staff to pin that down.
I need to go back out to my list of questions before I.
Mr. Farley, when is the next school board meeting that we can participate and voice our concerns?
Mr. Davis would have that information.
Thank
I
you.
do. So the next school board meeting is April 14th, but I actually think in terms of just voicing your concerns, as I said earlier, the Sandra Aguilera, who's the chief academic officer, announced that there will be a meeting with the date to be determined, because right now they're really focusing on the reopening for March 30th. But my understanding is going to be the week after spring break, and so as soon as I have that, I'll definitely, I'm sure Andrew will send it out, I'll send it out, Mr. Fairley will send it out, and I think that will be an important meeting to go to, because it will be district-wide for all middle school and high school families about this issue. And I had a couple of other questions that I saw in the list, Andrew, if you want me just to, I saw some questions about vaccination, and so all teachers and all school staff of any occupation have been offered vaccine appointments, and so we're not able to get require staff to provide their vaccination information. I know anecdotally, I just heard everybody's getting vaccinated. Some school staff can't get vaccinated for medical reasons, or they have a religious reason, or so we're not able to require anyone to be vaccinated, and all of our safety procedures are designed to take into account, if you look at the CDC guidelines, they don't require vaccination in order to have people in person learning. But all teachers have, and all school site staff have had the opportunity to get vaccinated. And as far as students, I think people were referring to the really good news that as of April 15th, anyone 16 and over in California is going to be eligible for vaccination. And so we have been working with the Alameda County Department of Public Health on vaccination issues the district has, and there has been a site open for the community at Fremont High School. And so we're going to continue to working with them. And so as the vaccine doses have just been accelerating. It's been a really impressive rollout. And so as that becomes a possibility, I'm sure the district will be working with the county to provide that to students who are 16 and over. And then once, the vaccine may get approved for under 16 in the late summer, early fall. And so we'll definitely be working with the county on that as well. And the one other question was, so I know that some people are very concerned about safety and don't want to return to in-person learning next fall. And so we're looking into the possibility of offering a district-wide distance learning option for high school students. So we're, that's still in the planning stages, but it's definitely something that's being considered. And for the summer, there's going to be a hybrid option, in-person / distance learning, and also a distance learning option for families who choose it.
Okay, did we miss any other questions? I just want to switch back to my,
I'm seeing some other questions. So yeah, we do, our tentative agreement with OEA does expire at the end of May. And so then we will just revert to the regular collective bargaining agreement. So in terms of what is in force for next year, it's just the regular agreement. But as the district makes decisions about next fall, the union is entitled to bargain the impact of those decisions with us. But there isn't anything in place that would change things for next fall at this point in time. And as to whether we're consulting with other districts, yes, we're absolutely. The superintendent is very much in touch, constant communication with West Contra Costa, with Berkeley, with folks all around California. Actually, she's a very well-networked superintendent. We're lucky to.
all right, do anyone have any more, yeah. Oh, the questions about, I guess there's a few more questions, Mr. Fairley. First of all, about the AP exam issues. The portal is closed for both paying for exams and for dropping exams. And I'm wondering if you have an update on whether the portal can be reopened. And then secondarily, people are interested in more information about graduation.
I know that, thank you for asking. I know that Mr. Campisi, who has been managing the AP exam registration and AP exam conducting the AP exams for the school, I know he's been in touch with the district on that. I had thought that those concerns had been resolved, but I can certainly collect those and bring those to his attention again. I'm sorry to hear that there's still some communication issues about that.
Will there be rescheduled SAT and ACTs for our juniors, our rising seniors and juniors? They've all been canceled this year, so I know people are.
Right, I have not received any updates to that information, but I'll definitely ask. So
Hey, Mr. Fairley,
as far as clearly I'm inferring that this would be the next SAT date that becomes available. Will the district be offering the SAT on that date?
At a minimum. I mean, all of them were canceled, so there's a bit of a backlog in the district for kids who need to take it. And I think that, yeah, that's the question. And the ACT.
Yeah, Mr. Fairley, just on the question, and thank you, Andrea, for putting that out there. My wife was actually able to get in touch with the testing organization, and they said that the administrator from the school simply needs to provide the information to them, and they would be able to register students who want to take the test. The tests are in May, so there's plenty of time between now and then. And then also we need to be instructed on payment. And of course, they're ready to work with Oak Tech on those details. So what we need is just a response from Mr. Campisi. I sent you guys both a few emails. I'm not sure if he's available or not, but we just need a response from him so we can move it forward. So is there a way for me to get in touch with him on the phone so we can just square it away? If you could just reply to my email if you'd like.
Sure. And just to be clear, I believe you began talking about the SAT, and you have a question about the AP exam?
I'm referring to the AP tests.
AP, I got it.
It's urgent, of course, because it's May, and because our son finished the class, we want him to take it while he still has the information, right, before he forgets. So yeah, so we have not heard from Mr. Campisi, and I don't think I'm alone on that. And the administrators at the testing organization, they simply need to work with him, and then we can get this thing wrapped up.
Well, let me definitely follow up with that this evening. There was a question about graduation. We are definitely planning an in-person graduation to supplement the virtual graduation that's being provided by the district. So we want, I mean, of course, Oakland Tech wants to participate in the virtual ceremony that is being provided, I think, just as a baseline, so that all Oakland students have that opportunity. But Oakland Tech is going ahead with an additional option of offering in-person graduation to students who are interested in that. It would be definitely, the capacity would definitely be reduced, so it will not all be in the same session, but there will be several smaller groups of students who would be graduating on the field is our plan, and we're working through those safety concerns and arrangements with the district office.
Thank you. I'm just going through to see if there's any more. Most of the stuff in the chat is about the AP exams, and so folks who have questions about graduation, I know Miss Sudith is overseeing that graduation committee. I do know they are doing lots of planning. She's been in communication with us at the PTSA about, because we have some, we help fund that. So I think directing your questions to the senior class assistant principal would probably be the best way to get information.
Can I jump in with a question, Andrea? So this is for you, Mr. Fairley and Sam, but thank you both for taking the time. I have a question that I've seen sort of popping up in the chat, which is about why OUSD seems to be taking a different tack on some of these common problems than other districts. And is there something that makes our district unique in terms of size or the communities we serve that would lead the folks to make the decision about the quarters that they have?
Want me to answer that?
Yeah,
you
the rationale that I've received is the one that was sent out from the superintendent's office. I think there are, the district has a particular concern that we're providing equitable instructional opportunities as well as seeking equitable outcomes throughout the district. And so as decisions are made, I think we tend to try to make decisions for the high schools as a collective nature, so that students high school students throughout the district can have as equitable experience as possible. That may have impact on the decision for quarters, but in order to say that, I'd be speculating a little bit.
Yeah, and I think just to follow up on that, that is what I heard from Ms. Aguilera, the Chief Academic Officer, was that, you know, there's been an issue across the state at large urban districts where more students were getting, you know, higher rates of D's and F's in courses this year and were not as engaged, and that Oakland saw a higher rate of engagement and fewer failing grades. And but, you know, I think there might be other reasons behind that other than the quarter system. So I personally, you know, have some skepticism about that as a rationale, but I do hear that that was one of the reasons in terms of this quarter system decision. So I think that's one of the questions that I do have to get more information on. But, because one of the things that Oakland had that a lot of other urban districts didn't have is we had a really successful technology outreach program. So, we have way more of our students online with, the Oakland Undivided campaign. And so they just gave out the 25,000 laptop, so there's been some really great progress that we made in that respect. And so I don't know that that's really, and I think also some teachers that I spoke to said, there might have been more leniency with regards to grading this year because of the pandemic. So it's I don't know that that's a great rationale, but it is something that I've heard them say.
So a lot of people are asking in the chat for the data, for the information to support the equity outcomes, and want to know whether there's any research beyond just the fact that there are fewer D's and F's. That would be helpful information to get. Katrina Saba, you had your hand raised. Do you want to ask a question or have some information you want to share? Trina, you're on mute if you're trying to talk. I don't know what happened to her. Oh, well. Katrina, feel free to jump in if you're still around. Yeah, so I think that we're getting close here to an hour, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know that while our D's and F's may not have increased or may have increased, I don't know. I know that some of the other high schools are facing really dramatic attendance problems. And so I don't know how not having them in school is helping. So unless Katrina, unless you can hop in, I'm gonna invite folks to, you can stick around, ask a few more questions, and I'll try and answer them, but I wanna be respectful of our guests' time and let folks go. Yeah, so thank you both for coming. And I really appreciate it. Any information you get, please share it with us. We would really appreciate understanding better what the thinking is on this stuff and where we can influence. So I did record this, and
Okay, I'll just.
Hey, and Andrea, I'm back.
Oh.
Okay,
If I can just, I just, Sam, I think that's exactly what the school district said. It was there are less D's and F's when school districts are on a quarter model. But thinking about equity on the big picture of the students of Oakland, that's a really low bar, to say that this is so we don't all have D's and F's when kids are only getting half a year of education. You know what I mean? So it's like we want all of our kids to, it's one thing to not get a D or F if you only learn half of a year's course. So it's not, yes, it's so important that we have equity within the district, but it's also so important that our kids in Oakland have equity with the rest of the world. I mean, our Oakland kids are just going to be left behind. So anyway, if you can bring that to the board, that's what I'm so worried about, that, my kid's going to do fine, but I'm worried about all these kids in Oakland who are only learning half of a year, and we're okay with that because they're not getting an F. I'm done. Thank you.
I absolutely hear you. And I just want to be really clear that, on the one hand, I was just presenting the information was given to me. And also, that this question about, just to be really clear, because I think it is absolutely very confusing, that the question of the quarter system versus the semester system is very different than the question of, the vastly reduced number of instructional minutes that we had this year, synchronous or live or whatever you want to call them, compared to what we would have next year when we're back as is planned. And just to be really clear to Laura's question, we are planning to go back fully in person for next year. That is the plan. And I think some of the planning around the quarter system is thinking about, okay, if we are fully back and yet we don't want to have students in 7 different cohorts because they're shifting between 7 different classes, right? because, you know, God forbid that infection rates go up again, right? So if we want to have students in a reduced number of cohorts, that might be part of the justification for the quarter system as well. So I think, but at the same time, they would have the regular number of instructional minutes. It wouldn't be a reduced number of instructional minutes like we had this year, and which was so very, very challenging. So just
Yeah,
to make it very clear that those are two separate issues. Because I
Totally
do hear that.
understood, and I completely makes sense. And I didn't mean this, by the way, to be an attack on you. I'm just hoping you bring it back to the board. I do think the big issue, and I think others, and I joined late, so I'm sorry, but I think the big issue is the continuity. So, you know, if you're learning math first and third quarter, by the time third quarter comes around, you've already had so much learning loss that you're kind of starting almost, you know, a half a quarter behind. You know, and there is no opportunity if a student has a bad quarter to make up that grade. They can't bring their grade up. They're done.
Right.
So anyway, thank you very much.
No, and I absolutely hear you. And as a former teacher too, right? You spend some time kind of getting into the swing of things. And so then to do that and then, whoa, didn't see him for 2 months. And then you're trying to rebuild that relationship, I think can be challenging. So I think there's definitely pluses and minuses. And there are other schools that do use the quarter system. So I will be asking, you know, what have we learned from those other schools? It isn't an unheard of thing.
To the folks who are asking, is it a done deal? We haven't heard otherwise, although both the superintendent and Dr. Aguilera suggested that they wanted to get some more feedback. We're going to try and explore where that might go. I'll be honest, been very impressed by their responsiveness to questions. It's been very frustrating and very disappointing to not even have our issues acknowledged. And I will just say this, Sam, I think that, you know, one piece of feedback I got from the district was that every high school is different, and maybe this is only a tech problem, but the other schools like this model. And I feel like we're getting isolated intentionally so that we don't have a cross-city dialogue about it, and we don't know what other parents want. So I think, you know, we really want to know what everybody else wants. We need to know what people think about next year and what they want for their high school students. I know that Oakland High and Skyline parents are also not that happy about the way the quarter system played out. So I'm a little bit skeptical that Oakland Tech is an outlier, but yeah, anyway, the horse is dead. We beat it to death. I'm going to stop the recording. I will share this for anyone who didn't get to watch the whole thing. And thank you so much, Mr. Fairley and Sam Davis, for being here with us. And so